estimated that by 2025, Africa will be home to 2.5 billion people and have the largest working force in the world, with consumer and business spending exceeding $16 trillion. This is expected to offer investors unmissable opportunities if they take a long-term view to investing and trading on the continent. For more on this, we cross live now to business reporter Ntokozo Khumalo. Ntokozo, obviously a lot of scope here for businesses and investment, but in terms of jobs and people's livelihoods with that population growth expected on the continent, how do we ensure proper trickle-down or sort of connection between these different opportunities?
Good afternoon, Erin. Well, that is exactly what delegates at the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement Business Forum are going to be unpacking over the next 2.5 days or so, just how those grand plans actually trickle down to driving employment, particularly youth employment, because Africa does have a very youthful population, but also, bringing in women into the fray. Now, the Africa Free Trade Area Agreement has been in the works, Erin, for quite a while, a little bit over a decade, when in 2012, the heads of state at the African Union Assembly actually resolved to fast-track the Africa Trade Area Agreement in a bid, of course, to, fast-track intra-Africa trade. And it's met quite a few milestones over the years, including the establishment of the Pan-African Payments Services that, of course, is meant to make business transactions across the continent. And the objective of the Free Trade Area Agreement is to open up the movement of goods, services, and people on the continent, and is being implemented in 2 phases, with the first phase being that making it easier for people, goods and services to move on the continent, and the second phase of implementation, which is what delegates will be focusing on over the next 2.5 days, is around bringing in that investment, dealing with issues that have to do with intellectual rights, driving digital trade on the continent, and then, of course, again, the role that women and youth play in intra-Africa trade. The sessions are set to kick off. Of course, it is Sunday, so delegates are slowly starting to trickle in, with our, South African delegates being the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition being part of that opening ceremony panel discussion, just unpacking really the role that South Africa has to play in driving intra-Africa trade as a powerhouse economy on the continent. And Erin, if you do remember, last week it was the SA Investment Conference where Cyril Ramaphosa's target of raising 1.2 trillion rand over the next 5 years, or the last 5 years really, was met and surpassed by about 300 billion rand. So some of that investment also going of really making trade with the rest of the continent a lot more seamless. So those are some of the conversations that we'll be listening in on, and we'll be speaking to some of the delegates that are attending here at the Cape Town International Conference Center. And of course, as I said, unpacking various issues from agriculture development to industrial development by, the facilitation of diversification on the continent, but also deepening those value chains. And, so one of the conversations that a lot of experts are looking to unpack is issues around how the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement will actually work when the continent already has some trade areas such as the East Africa Community as well as the West African Community that have created their own blocks for trade. So those are some of those conversations that will really be digged into over the next 2 days, Erin.
Well, good to have you on the ground then, Ntokozo, to keep an eye and an ear on those discussions, especially in terms of knitting those different sort of African regions where there are trade agreements, whether SADC or West, East Africa, all coming together under that umbrella. We will look forward to your coverage on that.